Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Finding You podcast. I'm Dr. Brad Reedy. Today is Tuesday, June 17th, 2025. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about the science of holding space, what that means, what prevents it, what allows us to be able to hold more space, and its result on our children, our partners, and ultimately the result that it had on us when we were growing up, and where it was missed and how that affected us. Before I get into the topic this evening, let me talk about the upcoming announcements and housekeeping. My two books, The Journey of the Heroic Parent and The Audacity to Be You, are available on Amazon and Audible. And if you're interested in any of our programming, our next available intensive, we just opened this up, is August 13th. After that, it's September 3rd. So the August 13th date is new, August 13th through 17th, September 3rd through 7th. So if you're interested in attending a Finding You Therapeutic Intensive, those are your next two options. You can go to our website or go to info@findingyouprograms.com. If you would like a coach or a therapist who works in the Finding You approach, who works in attachment-based therapy, who's been trained in the kinds of things and the ways that I talk about mental health, then contact us to find one of our coaches or therapists that can help you. All other inquiries, private intensives for couples, families, individuals, you can go to our website or email us at that email. I'm going to be hosting a 5-day workshop at the Omega Institute in New York this fall, October 12th through 17th, based on the Audacity to Be You. So this is different than our intensive program. This is a group experience at the Omega Institute. If you're interested, go to eomega.org and click on the workshops and find the Audacity to Be You. Myself and my daughter Emma will be assisting me, and we really look forward to it. This is a very affordable option. We're talking about $500 for approximately $500 for a 5-day workshop. So go to the Omega website to learn more about that. And of course, coming soon, right around the corner, is the Finding You Inner Circle. That is a subscription and support of the podcast. So it's $100 a year, $10 a month. That will have extra episodes, and also attendance at these live sessions will also be available to you. If you are a current or past Finding You client, then you're automatically enrolled. And again, you can go to our website or email us at info@findingyouprograms.com. So let me get into tonight's idea about what it means to hold space. First, I want to start off with the idea of how human beings are made, how we develop, what puts the shape into us of who we are. And ultimately, it is about the relationship that we have with the big people. When I say big people, I'm referring to our parents, our caregivers. Eventually, it's the relatives, the teachers, the authority figures in our lives. As children, we learn who we are by the way the big people experience us. How they think and feel about us is how we come to think and feel about ourselves. A child learns about themselves as they look into the face of their parents and others in their early contexts. How we think and feel about themselves, how we think and feel about ourselves becomes our inner voice. The voices, the feelings, the energies around us become an internal sense of who we are. Notice that I'm not just talking about what people say that impacts us. It's how they feel about us. So you can't hide. You can't imagine that just because it's not conscious, it's not having its effect, because it is. The unconscious of the child, the unconscious of the partner, the friend, can feel at some level our unconscious. So it's not just about what is said and felt. It's not just about what is said and done, but about how people feel. The unconscious of the big people speaks directly to the unconscious of the child. And the child develops their identity based on that energy, or maybe more accurately said, based on that feedback. And this is really how skills fall short. Containing, that I'll be talking about tonight, the idea of holding space, is built on the foundation of all of our work, right? It's at the foundation of all that we do. As a therapist, the fundamental thing that I'm doing is holding space for my client. As a father, I aspire to hold space for my children. As a partner, I aspire to hold space for my wife. And that becomes and builds a foundation inside of us. Something that can provide a root system to take hold. If you have the experience that your accomplishments or the compliments from others don't quite land, I cannot tell you. It's almost universal that people talk about how difficult it is to receive praise or admiration or compliments. It's because the soil isn't there. The foundation, the base isn't there. So often what I'm working on in therapy is building that base. Really spending my time, my energy, my focus on understanding the client. Fear, frustration, anger, disappointment, judgment all trigger in the child, in us as children, the flight or fight response. Let me say that again. Fear, frustration, anger, disappointment, judgment from the big people all trigger the fight and flight response in us. Feelings like these communicate to the small child that something is wrong with them. They conclude, modify their behavior, or they risk being rejected. This pattern then becomes hardwired at an implicit level. And therefore, again, the tools and the ideas and the insights don't quite resolve all of our complexes, all of our issues. They give us some hope. They can anchor this improvement in our base, but they don't quite push us over the top. They don't quite free the person from this pattern of hypervigilance and this need to present the false self, which we assume if we present the acceptable version of ourselves to the people around us, that will guarantee the proximity of other people, that other people will stay with us, that we won't be rejected. To take in the child, for the parent to take in the child, is to metabolize what the child presents, what the child gives. And we do that because of the greater resources available to us. Every parent knows what this is like. You have that experience where your child trips and falls, but you have a sense because of your life experience, because of your knowledge, because of your history with life. You have a sense that the child is going to be okay. So you take in the child's dread or terror or fear or pain, and you reflect back to the child a sense that they are okay. And you simply do this by your calm presence. That's what I mean by metabolizing it, because of the greater resources that you have available. And ultimately, this calmness, this holding, this patience, this non-reactivity, this non-fear response, ultimately the result of that is that the child trusts themselves. They know that they are going to be okay. I said this in a recent broadcast, but it bears repeating here. We feel safe when we are around somebody safe. What attachment theory explains is that this sense of feeling safe can be internalized and essentially become permanent in us. The result of a secure attachment, or in adulthood we call it an earned attachment, being held, is a sense that one is home. It is a sense of safety, a sense of security, the feeling that I am okay. Oftentimes in our mythology, it's referred to as heaven or nirvana. That's how sublime this sense is that we are home. And when caregivers consistently provide resonance, safety, and security, all of these words speak to the nature of holding space. Regardless of the tragedies and the circumstances over which, many of which we don't have any control over, neither do our parents, the child develops an internal base of safety that they carry throughout their life. So how children, how human beings are built is really in the shade, the shadow. I'm not speaking of the Jungian shadow here, but just in the presence of an adult's nervous system. And if a parent is anxious, and what's especially tragic is when the parent is anxious and does not own their anxiety, the child walks around not trusting themselves, feeling like the world is not a safe place. It's a strange kind of paradoxical thing. The nervous system of the parent is the major resource or reference point for the child making sense out of their early life. And that becomes hardwired implicitly, right? It becomes something that we don't have conscious awareness about. We just are that way. And the work to repair this, by the way, is slow. And it takes a significant amount of time. to overwrite, to undo, to repair this early wiring. It's about exposure, repeated exposure, and re-experiencing oneself, and ultimately the rewiring that results from that. And I think that the main resistance to doing one's work, there's a lot of resistance, of course, a lot of different ways that people are resistant, but one of the ways that people are often resistant is that because it's so slow, it takes a great deal of time. I want to share some examples from clients recently who have shared this sense of feeling safe and what it's done for them. I borrowed this quote from the Tiny Buddha, an account that I follow on social media. And it says, a bird sitting on a tree is not afraid of the branch breaking because her trust is not in the branch, but in her own wings. And after participating in a recent intensive, a client wrote this poem in reaction to the work that had been done, to the space that had been held for him, not just by the therapist, but by the other group participants. And he wrote this. He said, I thought I was a wingless bird at the end of a branch on a very tall tree. With all the me's that ever were, I smell the aroma of the peonies. I see the beauty all around me, and I realize that I have wings. When you have that experience of being seen, of being held, of being understood, it is so sublime that it lends itself to this kind of poetry. Another client told me a longer story recently in therapy. They shared the story that their young adult daughter was home on vacation, on summer vacation from college. And this same child was one that struggled with mental health throughout adolescence and is now succeeding in the world, going forward in the world, and is in college. But they were home and they were stressing out about finances, the state of the world, the political and the literal climate. And the parent that I was working with said they felt this feeling as the child was expressing it, and they had the instinct several times throughout this exchange to try to fix it. You see, you will experience at times your anxiety. You'll experience it as, I want to be helpful. That's how insidious it can be, how disguised our anxiety can be. But this father with his daughter said he found his instincts, his impulses rising up in him, and was able to hold them, to contain them. And after a while, his daughter went and sat on a bench in the living room in silence. And the father went on and checked on her, asked if she was okay, and she said yes. And then after a while, he went to go sit with her. And she thought as he was walking by that he was just walking by. So she moved and adjusted, expecting him just to walk by. And he sat on the bench next to her. And for what he has estimated was about 5 minutes, he said nothing. Eventually just resting his hand on his daughter's shoulder. And he said to me, he related this story to me as tears filled his eyes. And tears and were filling my eyes, and chills were covering my whole body. And he said, it took me 20 years, 50 years, he said. It took me 50 years to learn how to parent in this way. That my silence, that my patience, that my greater resources that I have worked on and developed throughout the course of my life would result in me simply holding space. And the child, after 5 minutes or so, the experience was over, and the child carried that with them throughout the day. That's how subtle it can be. That's what aware and conscious parenting looks like. It's practically invisible to the untrained eye, to the inexperienced therapy participant. Another way, and I want to talk about other ways that people talk about the way that a secure attachment affects them in real time, in real life. Georgia O'Keeffe, the great painter, once said, I have already settled it for myself. So flattery and criticism go down the same drain, and I am quite free. You see, when you have this base, when you know yourself and trust yourself, what other people think about you, it becomes obvious to you that that is about them, that it has virtually nothing to do with you. You don't have to repeat mantras in your mind. You don't have to talk yourself out of it. You don't have to convince them that their perspective or viewpoint is wrong. It goes, as Georgia O'Keeffe says, down the drain because you have settled it for yourself. I said recently, you either learn to stand in the storm, to stand against the storm as it comes, or you try to control the weather. If you don't have this secure base, the only option that you can imagine that will prevent the pain, the fear, the disaster that could come from this event or that event, no matter how small, actually. The only thing that you can imagine that will work to prevent the pain is to try to control circumstances, people, situations. So you either learn to stand in the storm or you will try to control the weather. That is basically the fork in the road, if you will. Codependency, controlling, manipulating behavior, narcissistic manipulation, all of those behaviors, all of those descriptions of behaviors are a trauma response for somebody who has not been held adequately during important developmental phases of their life or has not gained that in their adulthood through their own work. Amber Daslin said, one of my favorite descriptions of attachment, secure attachment is the delicate tangle of feeling safe, interconnected, independent, and free. The delicate tangle of feeling safe, interconnected, independent, and free. So you see, to hold space for our children, to hold space for our partners, we have to feel that about them first, connected to them, at peace with them, separate from them at the same time. Right? Thich Nhat Hanh said, we must love others in such a way that they feel free. Attachment, it's a bad word, especially because the Buddhists used it first to describe something pathological, something that creates misery. So I wish there was a different word for attachment and attachment theory and secure attachment. So just first of all, think of it differently than holding on, or think of it differently than being in control of something or somebody. It's a connection that is interconnected, connected to the person and independent of the person at the same time. We learn in our experience of being held to practice curiosity with ourselves. We do that because those who hold space for us are curious about us. For many years, I would ask my therapist to tell it to me straight. Don't pull any punches. I can handle it. And she would always look at me with a curious expression and she would say, I'm just trying to understand. And I didn't quite understand what she was saying, what she meant. Now I do. She was just trying to see the world through my eyes, to understand what it felt like to be me and to see the world the way that I saw it. To provide resonance and attunement, connection, attachment is what it's historically been called. And I learned after sitting with somebody who could listen to me complain about the same things, ask the same questions, encounter the same dilemmas over and over again, year after year, when she could continue to be patient, which I expected her to lose patience all the time. Sometimes I still do. When she sat with me, now I can sit with me better. And now I can sit with you better. And I can sit with you because somebody did it for me. Replacing judgment with curiosity is a tall order, since we must temporarily hold feelings of fear and dread. To hold space for somebody, to remain curious, means that we have to temporarily contain feelings of fear, anxiety, dread, disappointment, upset. If one has not healed sufficiently, this holding that I'm describing will recall feelings that one had as a child, where one's voice was ignored or dismissed. It will be a trauma trigger. Listening is a trigger for people who haven't been held. They think of it as the highest order to give their response, to give their statement, to give their opinion, because that's what they were taught. That's what they were shown. That's the only capacity that they have. Listening requires healing. My client that shared this story with his young adult daughter, he saw it as such a great accomplishment because he resisted urges, impulses, thoughts, ideas to say and do things that previously he would have called helping. But he did it because of the new wisdom that he has gained. He did it because he has some sense of what it feels like to be seen. So we have to heal in order to listen. We have to heal. Our inability to hold space is in some way a measure of our healing or lack thereof. In order to hold space, we must heal. Techniques will not suffice. Since, again, like I said, it's the emotional energy that gets through and really reaches the other person. I wrote last week that the greatest marriages are those where each partner is willing to bear the responsibility of their own shadow. That means that I have a history that is my responsibility. And unless I sort that out, take responsibility for my life's history and how it has shaped me, I will project it onto my partner, my friends, and my child as their responsibility. I will make them feel the badness that I feel. I will make them think that it's their responsibility to fix me, to return me to wholeness and to wellness. And I will hold them responsible for any of my quote unquote bad feelings. So as we heal, we pass on that healing by our capacity to hold space, to remain silent, to listen, to be okay in and of ourselves so that we can be a resource to other people. In contrast, if we are not okay, if we have not healed sufficiently, we need everybody else to be okay because we can't tolerate what I like to call our empathic misery, our empathic pain. I wrote this a while ago. I really like this. You were wounded, more than some and less than others, but you were hurt. And the way you protect that pain hurts others, most pointedly your children. So you work on yourself and you discover that your fear, your hurt, and your anger are yours. You take back those feelings so your children don't have to carry them. This is the greatest love that you can give, and it will multiply. Your children will bring even greater healing to their children. And in this very simple way, your love multiplies through eternity. So the work is to know yourself. To know yourself, you have to develop self-compassion. And to develop self-compassion, you have to experience compassion from someone else. Ideally, it happens to us in childhood, but where it doesn't, we find other people, other sources to quote unquote parent us. What does it mean to know yourself? It means that you grapple with the shame and the guilt that you feel, that have been imposed on you, that have been taught to you. You learn to unlearn, to deconstruct shame and guilt. You learn that your primary responsibility is to take care of yourself. And it is from that place of healthy and robust self-care that you more capably hold other people. Love thy neighbor as thyself is not a should. You can't love because you should. In fact, if you love because you should, it's not love, it's ego. You love because you can. Love thy neighbor as thyself means that how you feel about others is a reflection of how you feel about yourself. I was just thinking about it today, about self-judgment, having a dialogue with somebody in my head, revisiting a dialogue, where I said to them, the reason I have so much patience for all the other humans, because I can't bear the idea of hating myself. When I learned to some extent to forgive myself, to love my horrible, rotten self, or more accurately, the parts of myself, the aspects of myself that I was told and taught were horrible and rotten, the more compassion I developed for those parts of myself, really just to survive, the more I had it for everybody else. I learned to be responsible to take care of myself as I heal. I learned to feel what I'm feeling. I learned to deal with who I am. When the contained, the one who has been held, has a resonant impact on the container, and the response of the container is to empathically accept the contained and to subtly modify it, right? Your child comes up with a nightmare and tells you about it. You don't immediately dismiss it. Ideally, you don't tell them to go back to bed and say there was nothing to be afraid of. You listen. You offer warmth. And you assure them that it's okay because you're not afraid. That's how you modify it. That's what it means to metabolize our children. We take them in. And if we have matured, if we have become the adult in the relationship, we offer those resources to them. And in this situation, the one that is contained is more or less fully felt and understood by the one holding space. And at the same time, the person holding space can rely on additional resources, wisdom, experience, maturity, to feed back to the child or to the other person, a wider sense, right? Just the other day, one of my children said to one of my younger children, she said, yes, but you don't have a lot of experience in this area. Neither do I. So as you have more experience, you'll have more wisdom in this area. You'll have more knowing in this area. We learn to hold when we can. We learn by doing our work. We learn by allowing ourselves to be held. This is why parent work cannot be wholly parent psychoeducation. Again, that assists, that anchors, that can frame it. But the work is to build up your base. The work is to heal your own narcissistic wound, which is the wound of not being seen. When we show up to a relationship or a conversation because we should, we can end up abusing ourselves or the other person. So the shift in this way of thinking is to show up when we can. And when we can't, we don't show up. We take a break. We take a time out. We attend to our depleted self. We attend to the needs that we have. And this whole shift is the shift from trying to be a good person to just being a person. This is the whole goal in attachment-based therapy. It's for the client to re-experience themselves in a container, which is the mind of the therapist, which is fundamentally, in most cases, very different from the mind of the parent, who was worried about the child's safety and well-being constantly. The therapist has a bigger perspective. The client re-experiences themselves in the presence of this empathy, this warmth, this neutrality. What was bad at home, what was unacceptable at home, is now in psychotherapy nothing. Just something to deal with, something to look at, something to be curious about. This experience of being held in this way is likely different than the context that we were raised in. Therapy often becomes the childhood that we never had, and the therapist, the parent that we never had. That is, we move away from the mind of the parent and into the mind of the therapist. And if we are lucky enough to have a warm and accepting therapist, we rewire our brains for safety. Then we take that safety back to our marriage. We can see farther. We can see more. We can hold more. J.D. Gill explained, what does a well-trained therapist look like? A well-trained therapist is an expert at listening. He or she wants to hear how you feel, not how you are supposed to feel. He or she will try to find you where you are. He or she will try to find how it feels to be you with your history, your dilemmas, your hopes and fears. And if instead of trying to hear and find you, your therapist has the right answer for you, find another therapist, she says. The right answer will be the therapist's answer and not your answer. And this will likely duplicate the wounds from your childhood and the ways that you were treated by your parents. When the other person realizes that his or her presence has been recognized and confirmed, he or she will blossom like a flower. To be loved is to be recognized as existing. Have you looked at others in this way? If you embrace them with the energy of mindfulness, this is Thich Nhat Hanh, by the way, with your true presence, this energy is completely nourishing. It is like water for a flower. A flower needs water to live, and the person you love needs your presence. Just like the story I told you about the father and the daughter. Your presence is the most precious gift you can give to him or her. Just sitting with somebody, saying nothing, asking questions, waiting, learning, trying to understand. And the mantra that Thich Nhat Hanh offers is that we are present with the idea in mind of, dear one, I am here, really here for you. And we can all practice this mantra, and it really works. To understand and truly hear someone, to hold space for somebody, I wrote in The Audacity to Be You, sometimes you have to lose your mind. You have to get out of your context, out of your background, out of the ideas that you were taught about what it means to be a good spouse and a good parent. Right? So much of this is an unlearning, which is terrifying. Which means that we are going to be without guardrails. We're going to make mistakes. We are going to be a work in progress. I once wrote, when you become frustrated or disappointed with a client, speaking to therapists, or anyone else for that matter, you have in some sense lost contact with the other. If you could really see them and connect with them, you wouldn't be frustrated with them because you would understand them. Attachment theory tells us that a person's sense of well-being is the result of having a parent who provided this kind of adequate holding, this adequate container. An adequate container is the mind of the parent, where the child experiences himself as welcomed and safe, all of them. If the parent was able to hold the child in their mind, that is, tolerate the child, then the child experiences a sense of, I am okay. But when the parent's limitations, and all parents have limitations, are expressed in disappointment, disgust, or anger, the child is likely to interpret this message as, I am not okay. And they will go into hiding. I will learn to put away those parts of myself that upset the other people. I wrote this the other day, and I thought it nice to bring to this particular session. I wrote this series of slides on social media. I talked about this before, but I want to insert it here because it really does address the idea of what it means to hold space and how this gets passed on or not. I wrote, what is narcissism? Really, what is narcissism? And how do each of us have some of it? Narcissism, simply put, is the result of the narcissistic wound. And the narcissistic wound is the wound of not being seen, not being held. No child has a perfect childhood, so all children experience some of this narcissistic wounding, you and me included. And it's important that narcissism is not being overvalued. In fact, I think that that's probably impossible. Narcissism is not being overvalued, but rather being valued in the wrong way. It's being valued in the sense that one's worth and lovability is something earned. For example, being valued for accomplishments, how we look, gifts, successes, etc. Being valued or loved for what we do, for behaving, for being cooperative, for getting good grades, or for our admirable traits, results in an individual's inability to accept fault in themselves, to accept their humanness. Since such imperfections pose an existential threat. The only way that I can be loved is to be good. Often the wound is hidden behind a compensating confidence or arrogance. Or in depressed narcissists, it looks like self-loathing or shame. But narcissism is not arrogance. Although the classic version of narcissistic personality disorder is characterized by grandiosity, at its core, narcissism is the fear of rejection due to one's imperfections, due to one's humanness. Everybody has some narcissism, while relatively few qualify for the diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. It is debilitating and wreaks havoc. Narcissism, small n narcissism, what I'm calling it, small n narcissism, shows up when we are defensive. When you're defensive, that's your narcissism. When you can't listen to feedback, that's your narcissism. So when we're defensive towards feedback, criticism, or in the wake of our mistakes or our shortcoming, that is our narcissistic personality traits exhibiting themselves on display. Everybody listening to this can relate to that. So when our parents have not healed and addressed their own narcissism, it gets taken out on the child. The child then carries the inadequacy that the parent hasn't come to terms with in themselves. The child carries it. And it goes on and on and on until somebody in the family lineage decides to go to therapy and to make a change. The most common feature that I see in dysfunctional families is the unspoken rule that the parents are good. The children in such families are saddled with the burden of carrying the parent's ego. And this, of course, comes at the expense of the child's development. And the symptoms become the inner voice of these lost children. Why are we people pleasers? Why can't we tell people when we don't like something? Why can't we say no? Because we have been conditioned by our narcissistic parents, or if we are the parent, we have conditioned our children because of our narcissism, which is completely true about me. We have conditioned them to walk on eggshells around everybody else's ego, to tiptoe around everybody else's narcissistic wound. But when you have a parent who's made peace with themselves, you can get mad at them. When you have a business associate that's okay with their mistakes, they'll apologize, take full accountability. When you have a partner that knows that they're a handful to live with, they're easier to live with. It is the narcissistic wound that we are often up against. So the take home from all of this idea of holding space is that self-esteem, I mean, people want to know this more than anything. Self-esteem, resilience, mental health are largely the result of the kind of holding of space that I'm talking about, the secure attachment. Sometimes called seeing or containing. Today I've called it holding space, co-regulating, resonance and attunement. But remember this, the foundation of the ability to hold space is in your own work. And the unraveling of your own narcissistic wound, the legacy that you've carried from your parents. If you can't go back to your parents and joke about what idiots they were from time to time, you still have a parent that is still asking you to carry their ego. If you can't listen to somebody who has a different idea about you and how you showed up, you have some work to do on your own narcissistic wound. If you can't hold space, if you struggle to listen, and you justify, by the way, we justify our struggle to hold space and our struggle to listen by saying, well, that's not the way that it was. That's not the facts. But when you've unraveled your narcissistic wound to an extent, you don't care anymore. You come to that place that therapists sometimes talk about where it transcends this idea of what's objectively true, and you just want to know somebody's experience. You just want to be there for them. And because you've settled the matter for yourself, Like Georgia O'Keeffe, it doesn't matter what they think about you. Doesn't matter what they say about you. You don't need to defend yourself. First of all, if they're right, then it's probably not necessary to defend yourself. And if they're wrong, it's definitely not necessary to defend yourself. So your ability to be in a marriage, or at least your part of being in a marriage or a friendship or to be a parent, is grounded in the healing of your own narcissistic wound. And the way that is accomplished is by being held and seen, not judged, not somebody who needs to be helpful or fix you, but that somebody who has some experience with how incredibly hard and slow this healing process is. And therefore, they have patience for you, which then you internalize as a sense of self. You then, like the bird that's standing on the branch of a tree, trust your own wings. You know it will be okay. You don't need to control everybody and everything because you know that you're okay. You can let go of outcomes because you can. You can forgive because you can. You can listen because you can. Not because you should or it's the right thing to do. You do it because now you have the wherewithal in you that you have developed in relationship to another human being to be able to do these things. You do it because it's an expression of your healed self. And lastly, I'll just say this. In the wake of Father's Day and my reflection on that, to those fathers, those men out there, I'm saying those men because of they're the ones often more reluctant to go into therapy because of the way that they've been socialized. The best way to show your family that you love them is to do your work. It's true for moms and women and non-binary people also. The way that we show the people that we love them is we take responsibility for our own work, our own shadow, our own issues, our own healings, our own woundings, our own feelings, our own anxiety, our own fears. That's how we show the people that we love them. You want more of this? The Journey of the Heroic Parent and the Audacity to Be You on Amazon or Audible. You want a full immersion into this kind of psychology? Finding You programs is that. August 13th, we've just added to the schedule. August 13th and September 3rd are the next two. If you want a coach to work with on one-on-one or a therapist who's trained in this model, go to our website or email us at info@findingyouprograms.com. For all other inquiries for private intensives, go to our website or email us. If you want to spend 5 days with me in New York at the beautiful Omega Institute in New York, Rhinebeck, New York, go to eomega.org, click on the workshops tab, and then look under the Audacity to Be You workshop. My next broadcast will be next Tuesday. I'll be talking about rebellion, individuation, and connection. That'll be Tuesday, June 23rd at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And I look forward to that. Thanks for joining me this evening. You're exposing yourself to this kind of thinking changes you over time. Not the specific things that I said, but it's a way of thinking, a way of operating. You start to resonate with that vibration. You build that base up. When I posted the thing about narcissism, I had a couple of people direct message me saying that they thanked me for my compassion and the way that I see narcissism, which I said, you're welcome. It's for me. It's for my own narcissism. But the fact of the matter is, that's what it is. That's how it happens. We are born into relationships, we are wounded in relationships, and we are healed in relationships. That is uniquely Homo sapien. And so your participation, your listening to these, even though I say the same things in a variety of ways over and over again, your exposure and your listening does make all the difference. That's why I say, as I end tonight, for and on behalf of the people that you love and the people that love you, thanks for showing up and listening, because it makes all the difference in the world. Have a great evening, and I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.